Hey, welcome to an episode of the Businessology Show. This is part 2 in a 2-part series on strategic calendar work blocking that we introduced in the November show. So in the December show, here you're listening to, we're going to do more practical thoughts on the idea of strategic calendar work blocking. I'm going to show you some visuals of what calendar containering looks like. So let's dive into part 2. Okay. If you remember in the first part, I talked about my personal schedule being a Monday through a Saturday, 8 to 6. That's what I work. I've done that for a number of years. It won't always be like that. But that's kind of how I do it now to achieve the things I'm trying to achieve. So what we're wanting to show in this visual is really what does the visual look like of strategic calendar work blocking? And we talked about containering. So what we'll do is, one of the things we talked about in part 1 was strategic planning. Strategic planning is where we figure out all the things we want to do, and we lay out our calendar in advance with about 8 to 10 different efforts of the dedication of my attention as a resource to the things we're going to try to accomplish. And then we block our calendar. This is an example of a blocked calendar. So that I have January 2024. Monday the 15th through the 20th. And when you do strategic planning we do it for a whole year. We want to plan the whole year in advance of 2024. We'll do that in November. We'll figure out our plan. So I want to walk through which one of these blocks is a container and which one of these are actual layered on meetings or things that came out of some of our planning. I think you can tell pretty much specifically. But the first thing that's really a rock, we would call this a rock. We would put in our jar first. You may have heard that concept, right? Fill up your jar with your rocks first, right? All of the big things in your life. That's kind of how we do calendar planning. Get the jar of next year and fill it up with all the rocks that you want to make sure you can fit in the jar first. And then on top of that, put the smaller pebbles, right? Put the pebbles, and then they'll fit in between those bigger rocks. And then sand, you pour sand in as the last thing, and it fills in all the crevices, right? Now, so if you put sand in a jar first and then tried to put the rocks in, they won't fit, right? So you put the rocks in first. The rocks, in this example, are all of the things you want to accomplish. The rocks I would call containers, and specifically it's on Monday, you see there's one called strategy and planning, and on Friday, you see strategy and planning on Monday and Friday. That is something my partner and I do as we're planning, and we're constantly working on the strategy and change of our businesses week after week. Now, we have 2 businesses. If we had one business, we could probably just have one strategy and planning block. But what we have is 2 strategy and planning blocks. And you can see every Monday, every Friday from 9 a.m. to 4:30, we've containered our calendar all the way through the year to hold this big rock of a time called strategy and planning. And then you can see other things that we want to be devoted to. So I don't work out of my inbox. So that's a big no-no for an entrepreneur to work out of an inbox. An inbox is just a big old fat list of things a bunch of people want from you, right? Most of it or a lot of it being spam. So working out of an inbox is really the wrong way to do effective work. So you see, I define on my calendar when I'm going to work on my email inbox, right? And you can see it's at the end of the day. Twist in emails. Twist is our chat system for our team. Our companies are both virtual, so our office is an online chat system like a Slack. People are familiar with Slack. We use a similar chat system called Twist. So our team are in Twist all day, every day, working together and producing revenue. Basically, that's the job of the team, fulfill the contracts with the clients, and so do the revenue. But I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to be running a company with my partner. Now, of course, I do some revenue generation too, like consulting and coaching, but I still have to define when am I going to do twist and emails. And I define that at the end of the day. And sometimes even at the end of the day, if there's a blow up, I don't even get to my twist and emails. And that's how low on the importance totem pole twist and emails are. They are important. They're just way less important than other things. And that's the point of strategic calendar work blocking, is to say, put things on here that display their importance to you. So you can see strategy and planning is the thing that is very important. And then twist and emails is something we're going to push to the end of the day. And then you see other things that are very, very important. You see a container called meetings, right? You see that on Tuesday, and you see meetings on Thursday. In our strategy and planning, we actually think through, okay, are there things in your role where you meet with clients and team and you need to stop doing that? Can you delegate those? And we're always thinking, how do we delegate those meetings to other people? Because we're always going to have a lot of meetings. And so when we're determining, all right, I think I'm not going to be in those meetings anymore with the team, that pulls back that meeting block, right? And so maybe we would have a container for meetings that went from 10 to 4:30 on Tuesday and Thursday, but because of our strategic planning, we pulled back the meeting block on Thursday. And this is basically saying our strategic intention is to get Jason out of the meetings he's been in. So let's shrink the block and act as if he's going to actually be out of those meetings. So we're not going to devote the real estate of his calendar to the effort of meetings. And so that forces our hand in a sense. We're like, well, if you're shrinking that block and you can't meet with, team and clients anymore, then what's going to happen? Well, I got to give it to somebody else. Somebody else has got to perform that. If in fact I'm trying to shrink that meeting block as a strategic initiative to pull myself more and more out of meetings. That's kind of the thought process we'll go through when we're building this calendar, right? We're strategic planning, and we're talking about meetings. Do you have too many? Do you have enough? What should you be meeting about? What should you not be meeting about? We're planning, we're being intentional. And then we go, okay, that was a great conversation about meetings. Let's attempt to shrink the time we're devoting on your calendar to meetings. Let's see if it works out. That's us trying to be strategic about our future. So you see those meetings, and what you see layered on top of those meetings are the things we're going to be doing, like a monthly Thrival team meeting, one of our other companies, our community group. That's an effort of our Thrival community, or a CSM, client services manager meeting with our client services manager. And so we'll put those, we'll layer those on top of our containers. So our containers guide what we're doing, and then we'll layer on the things that come in actuality, right? So the containers happen a whole year in advance. They happen a whole year before we actually go through them. And then as we go through each week, we're layering things on so we know what they are. Now, we have team meetings here. Sometimes we'll call this team meetings or team care. This is where we do a lot of our team-related work. So we have a leadership team meeting. That's a 90-minute meeting that happens before our weekly team meeting every Wednesday at 12 p.m., which is what I mentioned in the previous podcast. And then quarterly conversations are things we do with our team every single quarter, where my partner and I meet with each team to check in, to care for them, to help them work through things they're struggling with, to talk about their goals, their strategy, things we need to hear them, even sometimes their feedback to us of things that aren't working well. We need to hear from them and collaborate with our team. We have a place to do that. We set a team meeting container, and we layer that on with a quarterly conversation. And as always, typically somebody different every single week, because we have team large enough And then other efforts, right? Before we block this calendar, there are efforts I'm devoted to, which is content production. That's my job, part of my job. And so you can see new internal IP content. I have that block on Wednesday afternoons and Saturday afternoons. So we're trying to devote that much time to new internal IP. Basically, this is the content we create internally, like programs, summits, conferences. These are the things we produce, which are basically things we sell. We sell the production of that content. Or I also produce content for external sponsored parties too. So external sponsors hire me to produce content on behalf of their marketing department that they use in the form of blogs, webinars, ebooks, those kind of things. I have to have a block for that too. Now, you could just say content production, right? But for us, there's so much going in one way or the other. Some of it's internal, some of it's external. We had to make an intentional decision. How much of our calendar do we want to give to ourselves and keep for ourselves? That's that new internal IP content. That's brand new things that we want to produce internally for our companies, for sale that we create, or these are our blogs, things like that we need to push out in terms of content. And then how much do we want to sell? How much of my time do we want to sell to external parties, right? And maybe we thought this block should be bigger. Maybe we could fill it up. But we may have said, you know what? Maybe this is the year to spend writing a book. So we'll pull more into the new internal IP content and shrink some of what we sell to the external sponsors. And that's a decision, right? We made that in our November strategic planning when we said, you know what? We're going to take a risk and produce less revenue related to content production for external sponsored parties. And instead, we're going to keep some of that content back for us to produce something we think would be way more long-term value, maybe a book. I keep using that as an example. This is how we'll talk through this calendar. And it takes a lot of conversations to figure these things out too. Now, out of mine and my partner's work of strategic planning, we're talking a lot, right? We're like, should we do this? Well, this just came up. Should we make that decision? A lot of this comes out and we go, okay, here's what we're going to do when we come out of a strategy and planning Monday meeting for a whole day. Then we'll put that on our lists, right? My partner has a list of things she's going to go do. I have a list of things I'm going to do, and I put them in a product called Todoist. Todoist is made by a company called Doist. Doist is the company that makes Todoist. They also make Twist. So we have a combined, our chat system lets me flip something in a Twist conversation over to a Todoist block. And so when I get into my Todoist blocks, these are my to-do lists, obviously. So these are blocks I work on my own. So the strategy and planning are things I'm with my partner on, and then Todoist are things I'm by myself in my office and knocking tasks out, right? These are typically email that person, check on that thing, review this thing, review that tax return, or whatever thing I'm doing. I'll kind of knock those out in my Todoist list. And then I have other efforts that are important for me, like a technology website and video, where I'll work on some effort or update to our website that I may be working on with our technology specialist. Now, this block I know for sure recurs, I think once a month or twice a month, this block. So what you see here may not be what every week looks like. This is just a representation of one of the weeks. This might recur every 2 weeks all the way through the end of the year. That's that rhythm that it falls on. And then Saturday, you can see there's a lot of different things I'm doing. I'm mainly working by myself on Saturday. Obviously, I'm not in meetings on Saturday, so I'm doing a lot of our consulting preps, some research, social media planning. And then, of course, I'm in a studio here doing these videos, and I have that blocked. And so we coordinate with our studio actually to get those blocks on the calendar. And then I use these blocks, these social media planning and review blocks to prep and plan in advance for these blocks. So that's another example of being successful. Producing videos at a high volume consistently over and over means I have to have containered that block, and then I have to plan for the things I'm going to talk about in that container. So you're actually looking at a slide deck that I prepared in a social media podcast planning block. Anything that gets done in our life was planned to get done. So that's really important. All right, so that's an example of this is actually my calendar. That's an example of containering. Now, what I want to do is my partner and I work as a visionary integrator partnership, which means I stay in the lane of visionary and she stays in the lane of being an integrator. So she integrates my work, and then visionary lets me stay pretty high level and out in the future. So that's where I try to stay. And so she blocks her calendar. Now I'm going to add her blocks to my calendar, is this next screen. And you can see the red blocks are my containers. And then I'm going to add the purple containers, which are my partner's blocks. You can see as a visionary integrator how they kind of mirror one another. Now, she's the integrator and the COO of the two companies we both own. So she does some work on Saturdays too, but tries not to do as much work as I do because we have two different roles, and that's fine. But you can see her purple strategy and planning blocks mirror mine. That's the goal. You can also see when I'm by myself Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning in my Todoist block, I'm knocking out my to-do list. She's also knocking out ops lists things. She's clearing things off her plate because she has a whole operational team, right? Well, the whole team, she leads the whole team, but she has a specific group of people that are ops. And so she's reviewing stuff they're doing. She's working with them. She's going to meetings with them. It's really important. Now, you also see on Wednesday, when I'm in a leadership team meeting, she's in the leadership team meeting because she's leading the leadership team meeting. Some people think the CEO may lead the leadership team meeting, but the COO really has a better grasp of leading those meetings. I'm visionary, so a visionary is pushed a little bit further away from the team and a little bit out into the future. That's a key location of a visionary's place. So she's closer to the team, and she's a little bit closer on the calendar to present day. So she really knows what is going on in a leadership team meeting. And then the weekly team meeting is led by our team. That's all planned, but we're both in that, obviously. And then we're both in quarterly conversations as well. She is also in the community planning. This block on Tuesday afternoon, she didn't accept that calendar block. We have to accept all these calendar blocks. So that one still looks open, but she's coming to that one and the client services manager meeting as well. Now, when I come to the studio on Thursday afternoon, that's where she has a lot of time to do ops and events and go to meetings with her team. So that is how those layer on together. So I want to talk about how we use strategic calendar work blocking. So I want to just talk through real quick a couple of concepts. This is how you win with strategic calendar work blocking. And before I move into that, let me just say this. We want to acknowledge what a lot of people struggle with is, Jason, you can't block a calendar a whole year in advance. You actually can't predict the future. And you're correct. You can't. So when you do block a calendar in advance, and there's a reason we do it, we talked about it in part one, there is a reason that allows us to be successful. But when actual life happens to you and it didn't match what you planned in your calendar, how do you deal with that? I just want to mention a couple of concepts of not only doing strategic calendar work blocking, but learning how to win with strategic calendar work blocking. And one of those is moving blocks. That's key. So when you plan your calendar a whole year in advance, it's not going to look that way. So you have to be good at moving blocks, right? So you have to be adept at moving blocks when reality sets in and it changes your plans. We don't delete blocks, right? Because if we've already strategically laid those out intentionally, we believe all of them are needed. But we know life brings us different things. And so we have to be good at moving our blocks around. Sometimes we'll shrink our blocks. Sometimes we'll expand our blocks. Because we want reality to sit into the strategy that we've pre-planned. And some people might say, well, Jason, if you plan the whole calendar in advance, then and you're going to move it anyway, why don't you just not plan the calendar in advance in the first place, and then you don't have to move anything, right? Well, because what that doesn't do is it doesn't let you define your precious resource of attention, which is what we talked about in part one. One of the goals of strategic calendar work blocking is to be intentional about saying, I want to achieve all of these big goals, and I want to run our companies in healthy ways and in balanced ways. And so I'm going to have to intentionally say what I want to do, which is one of the points here I want to make in a minute. Even though I'm going to have to move some of them, I have to start my life with, this is what I planned and intend to accomplish. And so when you plan intentionally your future, you accomplish way more than if you don't plan anything, right? Because anything strategic is not done accidentally. It's done intentionally, which is what strategy means. So then there's a domino effect. This is another thing you need to know about how to be good at winning with strategic calendar work blocking. So we mentioned moving blocks, right? You pre-plan the whole year, and then reality sets in and you got to move some of those blocks around, and that's okay. That's life. But if you move those blocks around too much, what you can do is you can compress things, and you have to be really careful not to compress things. That basically means if we strategically plan our whole year, and in February, let's say we want to launch a brand new event called a summit, right? We want to invite people to come from all over the country to our summit in February. That's pretty cool. But what we had to do to pull that event off in February is we had to have a lot of blocks in January and even months before that, preparing us for the content, order the food, find the caterer, get the location, communicate with people who are signing up, get the website set up where they can fill out a form and pay. All of this has to be done. And if you come to a block you have to move because your tire blew out when you came to work, and you didn't get to fulfill a block where you filled out the form and made the form live on your website so people could sign up for this new event in February, you'll move that block, right? But if you keep moving that block closer and closer to the time of the event in February, you're compressing your goal and you're not allowing people enough time. You're not allowing yourself enough time to market that event, to communicate with people if they're interested in coming. So you just have to keep in mind when reality sets in with real blocks that are layered on top of your calendar containers, you can't just move them necessarily as far out into the future as you want, because you'll be moving them closer and closer to the intentional time you meant to finish that project or that idea, and you'll compress. So there is a domino effect that you have to be cognizant of and mindful of, and be careful with how you're moving those blocks. You do have to move them, but you could cause a domino effect, which just squeezes everything into a short amount of time, and then it starts to overwhelm you. And then I want to mention yeses and nos. This is something to remember, so you can win with strategic calendar work blocking. A calendar, we say this, is a perfect visual representation that you cannot have everything you want, right? It's basically saying you can have 40 ideas, but next year may only allow you to do 15 of those. And your calendar, if you block it appropriately, proves that point to you, right? So one thing we find with entrepreneurs is they want to say yes to everything, right? Because we talked about this in part one, they have this perception that they can do anything they want, which is not true. As an entrepreneur, you can't do anything you want. You can make any decision you want. So you have to become good at making intentional decisions, which is what strategic calendar work blocking is all about. So blocking a calendar in advance is basically saying all of your yeses first. It's saying, here's all the things I want to say yes to, right? And then it makes your no's much easier, right? Because when you filled up all your meeting spaces and you have no more calendar space to add another meeting in one particular week, and somebody says, hey, can I meet with you? You get to say, no, you can't meet with me. Or here's what you could do. You could say, that meeting request from that person is so important. It helps me achieve such a high level goal. I'm going to actually take some space from one of my containers and shrink it and give it away now to something I had not intentionally thought I would give it away to, because I hadn't been presented with this opportunity at the time I was blocking my calendar. Remember, blocking a calendar a year in advance is just an intentional plan of what we want to try to achieve. It's us being intentional in our goal setting. It's not a reflection of reality. But for the most part, it does really reflect a reality of a future you're able to pull off, which is really cool. But for entrepreneurs, this yes and no is that if you can say your yeses first, the no's become way easier, because entrepreneurs really stink at saying no. They want to say yes to everything because they see every great thing as a new opportunity, which they're not realizing that they have a limited resource of attention and limited calendar space. So blocking a calendar in the future really shows you what you can and can't do. So related to some of those, and we're coming to the close here, benefits and advantages of moving is, here's this question: How does understanding the method to adjust your calendar give you ultimate freedom of choice within your business structure and goals? And basically, it helps you know you can be really good at planning. Don't be fearful in planning, right? Be courageous. Go ahead and plan that future. Plan that audacious future that you want to achieve, because you always have the ability to move things and adjust to reality. And so basically, you have the full freedom to move your blocks around. So block the future. Don't be fearful to do it. You always have the freedom to move those around when reality sets in. So strategic calendar work blocking is not setting a calendar in concrete. It's actually just listing an intentional future plan to be successful. And it does work extremely well. Just know moving blocks still gives you the choice to be fully free and in control. The domino effect: how does managing the domino effect of strategic calendar work blocking give you the power over healthy priorities and rhythms that lead to more reasonable lives? Basically, knowing the domino effect means you're not going to crush things into 1 week that you didn't intend to crush, and then you got to stay up all night and work, right? That's not a reasonable way to live. So being cognizant of this domino effect and how it can compress and push things into your life that'll affect you, your family, your team members, your partner, and things like that. Knowing about that domino effect helps you keep things spread out appropriately, so you're not crushing and pushing things into a small amount of time that overwhelm you, that frustrate you, that make you angry, and just blow things up in your life. So you can manage and balance a more reasonable life with strategic planning and knowing that domino effect is there. Now, one thing we find with people we work on with strategic calendar work blocking is they start pushing a lot of this blocking, this strategic future blocking methodology into their personal lives, right? Some people are just automatically good at this. If they want to work out 4 times a week, they're going to do it if they plan to do it, and they're going to do it if they plan to do it and put it on their calendar, right? They're more apt to do it when they lock themselves into the accountability of a calendar that says do it. Then you have to face the fact that you keep skipping blocks if you don't work out in the morning. So these advantages do not only apply professionally, they apply personally as well. And then yeses and no. How does managing your yeses and no intentionally support your strategic vision and your growth goals? Well, it means you basically put your rocks in the jar first, which is, I put all of my yeses, all of the things I really want to achieve, all of those things, I already got those on my calendar, and I'm not going to let anybody move those. So when somebody comes and pushes an urgent request into my calendar, I'm going to try to not put it on top of that intentional, big, audacious goal I wanted to achieve. So saying your yeses in advance means you're really more apt to achieve those high-level ideas and goals in your life. And then your calendar already pre-blocked, right, intentionally and strategically, lets you push those no's away when they come in on you. Now, if you hadn't planned your calendar in advance and you get a lot of requests, it's hard to say no when you look at a calendar that has white space, right? So, well, there's white space. Well, it doesn't mean there's white space there available for everybody else to put their requests and ideas onto your calendar. It just means you never intentionally planned the things you should have been doing in that space, if that makes sense. So say your yeses in advance. It makes saying your no's much easier. So that's part 2, a little more practicality. Thank you for joining us for this Businessology show lesson. I hope this is helpful. Email us at info@blumercpas.com if you have any questions. Take care.